Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain, where here we are, nerdy for the birdies. So, let's talk about the Eagles offense. It's been a rough start for this team. Despite being 4-0, you have frustrated fans, frustrated players, frustrated everything. So today, we're going to strip away all the noise and all that stuff, and we're going to look at deep down what is the problem. And I'm going to do it in more of this podcast style where I'm not going to have a lot of imagery or anything like that. We're just going to talk. Because I think, I think it's the easiest way to get through this. I've tried making this video a couple of times, but it's tough to talk about the offense's issues and single them down to really one thing. Because it isn't one thing. It's a lot of things. So just sit back, relax, and hope you guys enjoy this. And if you guys like this, I'll do more videos like this throughout the season. Hopefully not talking about how bad the offense is. But yeah. The Eagles' offense just is not good right now, and we all know it. We all see it, and there's a lot of debate about how concerned should we be. Is this 2023 all over again? Who cares? We're 4-0, and I think there's merit to both arguments of the conversation. And I think ultimately, we all want the same thing, obviously. We all want the team to be successful, but we also want the team to be good and successful and sustain that success. And being blunt about it, this is not sustainable. It just isn't, right? The offense, yardage-wise, it's among some of the worst teams in the league. Teams that are starting backups and rookies. And you just have all of this talent, and it's not showing up. And, there's been a lot of blame towards Patullo, blame towards Jalen, blame towards whomever. And I think it really is just a top-down issue, right? I think it starts with Nick Sirianni. I think it goes to the offensive coaching staff. I think it does go to Jalen. And I think it goes to the other skill positions. But today I'm really going to break down the offense into three categories. That's personnel, execution, and scheme. And just talk about each of those problems within it. And personnel is really the first problem I want to talk about. And what I mean by the personnel is the groupings that the offense comes out in. And the offense just leans way too much in 12 and 13 personnel, and I frankly don't understand why. They're ineffective at it, and they really just lack the players for that type of personnel. Now, I saw, I think, a tweet or something, maybe it was an ESPN segment a couple weeks ago about Dan Orlovsky saying, the best teams run 12 personnel, under center, play action. And, that may very well work for certain teams. It doesn't work for every team, and if you don't have the personnel for it, you shouldn't do it. Right? Doesn't mean you're a bad team, just means you don't have that type of personnel. I don't think the Eagles have the personnel to be a good, heavy personnel team, for two reasons. Number one, their best players are not their tight ends, and number two, the tight ends that they have are not great blockers, right? Outside of Goddard, and even this year he's been kind of average. You just don't have great blocking tight ends. You don't have guys who can work and just absolutely smash, linebackers and safeties and corners and maul them down in the run game. You just don't have that. How many times have people broken down film on the various channels out there, and you see Grant Calcaterra whiffing a block, Kylan Granson whiffing a block, Dallas Goedert whiffing a block? It's frustrating. And it's like they keep leaning into these sets, and the biggest problem about 12 and especially 13 personnel, you're not prioritizing Devontae and AJ, right? And that's where the whole AJ Brown situation kind of comes from. And, I think that's the other problem with the personnel is that they just don't lean into their elite players as much as they could. They don't lean into AJ at all this year outside of one half against the Rams, and they don't lean into Devontae at all. And it's frustrating. We look around, we're waiting this offseason, all the talk. AJ really wants to prove he's one of the best receivers. Week 1, was AJ 100% that game? I don't know, but since then, outside of that second half against the Rams, they just don't act like they treat AJ and Devontae like they're not AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and I frankly don't understand it. I don't see the reason to emphasize this 12-13 personnel to run the ball just to smack it up the middle over and over again and get nothing and barely look AJ and Devontae's way, right? I just think they're not leaning into the right way to use their personnel, and that's a coaching problem. That's an offensive coordinator problem, and they've got to find ways to get these guys available, because I don't want to hear comments after games saying guys were zoned out, as in they couldn't get open because the scheme was just taking them away, which we'll talk about scheme later. But the usage of this team's personnel has really been pitiful. And even the usage of a guy like Saquon. I mean, they're just smashing him up the middle for no reason. He's going nowhere. The run game's not working, right? And they just keep doing it. It's like slamming your dick in the doorway again and again and again, expecting a different result, and then complaining that your dick is swollen. And that's the frustrating part about it is, it's like they have good players, they're just not using them correctly. They're not getting creative on how they use them. The personnel usage has been poor. And now we can pivot to the execution. And this is where I think this pivots away from the coaching staff, and this falls on the players. And I think a big problem with the execution starts with the offensive line. I don't think this offensive line has played as well as it could have. And I don't think Landon Dickerson is having a good season at all. I think Cam has been a little less than stellar. Tyler Steen is clearly, a pass blocker. I think Jordan and Lane have been perfectly fine, although Lane has just been beat up this year. But that's the frustrating thing, is this offensive line, it just isn't opposing its will. And I mean this more so in the run game than the pass game. They've been fine against the pass. Again, Landon has given up some sacks this year and stuff like that, and it's frustrating to watch. And, I think so much of this team's identity starts with the offensive line, and they are clearly just not it this year. They have not executed the plays well. There's just been mistakes. It's missed blocks here and there, and it continually causes Saquon to get stopped in the backfield and not really clearing the way for him the way they used to. Too many missed assignments, just not pushing into the run. And again, I brought this up before in the personnel section for the tight ends. They're not good blockers. They keep whiffing blocks. And look, if the coaching staff keeps expecting them to do it, they have to do it, or they have to stop doing it. And I think at this point, it's time to take those plays out of the playbook. The execution just hasn't been good. There's been times where Saquon, as a runner, has not necessarily executed his runs correctly. There's been times where he's missed reads or missed holes, or he's trying to do too much, spinning in the backfield, and he gets tackled. Again, it's him trying to overcompensate for a bad offensive line, but that's kind of been the situation. I think at times Jalen. Now, Jalen, I think, has been fairly good as a processor this year, but there have been times where he has just flat out missed reads. And I think the second half against Tampa was a really, really poor performance by him. Just missing opportunities, missing throws, and I think that led to AJ's frustration as well. I think at times the other receivers, I don't know if this is by design or not, but they are running routes where they are just not running hard. There are times where receivers are running the same route, and they're in the same area as one another. And that creates problems for Jalen. And now he's missing throws because of that. There are problems where guys aren't running hard, and it creates issues. There was a play against the Bucks where AJ's running a slant and Goddard's running a curl in front of him, but Goddard's only kind of half-assing the curl. I don't know if he's doing that because he knows full well he's not getting the ball, but if he's going to half-ass the curl, it takes away the space for AJ, so now Jalen can't throw that slant, and now I think he ended up either throwing it away, scrambling, or taking a sack. I don't remember which. But it's stuff like that throughout the game that frustrates you, and you see it all over the tape. I don't think the players are executing at the level that they were at the end of the year, and it's a shame because they brought back 10 of 11 starters from the Super Bowl team, and they hoped that they would be able to build upon what they left last year. But I think the biggest reason why they haven't done that is the scheme. And I think the scheme has not suited this offense because of some of the issues with the personnel, because of some of the ways the team has executed. The fact that the scheme has been, for the most part, fairly bland and boring and has not been able to allow their best players to shine in the ways that they can, it's held them back, right? Too many condensed sets. And if you look at the stats, when the Eagles run condensed sets versus when they don't, they go from a bottom 5 offense in condensed to a top 5 offense when they're spread out. And it's like, statistically, I can't remember where all these stats came down. I write all these notes down. You'll have to take my word for it. And that's kind of the point. And, they work much better when they spread out. I think one of the best formations this team has is empty. I think they're really good out of empty. Jalen's always been good out of empty. It's something where he can be this kind of like +1 in the run game where most teams run empty. They're not necessarily running it. Think the final play against the Cowboys, for example, where he runs and picks up a first down. there's just too many times that you see on film that routes are being run that will never work or aren't meant to work. Again, times where guys are just kind of jogging where they know they're not getting the ball and they're just kind of ignoring it. And like there's a play and it's made the rounds, and when it happened live, I was like, please don't throw this ball, Jalen. Just throw it away because this play's not going to work. And Jalen threw it. It was this weird return motion play by Saquon where he kind of like loops around. And Jalen throws to him as like a screen, but he doesn't really have a blocker, so he just gets tackled for like a loss. And it was just like, that play was just junk that. Like, I have no idea what was supposed to happen. Like, throw that in the trash. That's just a terrible concept. And there's way too many of those on tape where Jalen drops back and there's just nothing open. And then it leads to him either having to scramble and bail us out, or scramble and get sacked, or throw it away, or whatever. It's just not been great. And again, I brought up this before, it's not highlighting their best players. I mean, what have they done this year to highlight the talents of AJ Brown or Devontae Smith? Like, if you really think about it, not much of anything. Most of it has been them just making good plays and making things work. And I think that's what frustrates people. The offense has been highly inefficient. I mean, relatively speaking, you talk about success rate, like the numbers are fine, especially in the run game, but it's because they're picking up like 3 yards instead of like 5 or 6 or 7. The yards per attempt is ridiculously low. You know, it just doesn't, it feels like they have to just fight and claw for every yard. And there are moments of brilliance for the offense. I thought the first half against Tampa fit this conversation. Second half against the Rams, the first half against Dallas, where they're moving the ball, spreading it around, guys are getting involved. You know, that's what it is. And I've had a lot of thoughts about the Eagles scheme, and I'm going to say something that I've not heard anybody say this week. The Eagles scheme feels like it's meant for a team like the Buffalo Bills and not the Eagles. And what I mean by that is all these heavy personnel sets and running with these big jumbo formations and not necessarily featuring the wide receivers a ton. Well, it's kind of what the Bills do, but the Bills do it for different reasons. The Bills don't have an A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith level receiver. Closest is Khalil Shakir, who's a great slot receiver, but you have Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, guys like that are good outside receivers, but they're not guys that like you necessarily need to feature. They've had good performances this year, but that's not really the strength of their offense. Their strength is their run game with James Cook, and they have good tight ends that can block, by the way, and they use them, and they get in these heavy formations. Josh Allen can run, and they do that, and it's highly successful. I think that offensive structure can work. It just doesn't work for the Eagles because they have completely different players. Again, why are we featuring plays for John Mechie and Grant Calcaterra when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? I'm not saying every pass needs to go their way, but we shouldn't be finishing games where they both combine for fewer than 15 targets, right? They should be highly featured players. If they're not getting open, come up with concepts to get them open. You run slants all the time. How about we run a sluggo? I mean, this is what AJ even mentioned. Like, his whole issue isn't that he's not getting the ball. It's that the team is still struggling and he's not getting the ball. That the idea that he knows that he can be a spark plug for this team, and he's done it time and time and time again. And I think back to a play in 2023. The Eagles were playing the Giants. This was Christmas Day, and they had that big lead, and they were losing it, and the game becomes close. And then A.J. Brown just has that big catch on 3rd and 15. Him and Jalen convert, and that kind of got the Eagles rolling again, and they managed to finish the game somewhat strong, right? And I think that's just what it is. The offense just has been so choppy this year, and I don't know why. I don't understand why AJ's not featured more. I don't understand why Devontae's not featured more. It would be one thing if AJ was having a quiet start because he's playing these elite corners and they're just taking him away, and Devontae is feasting, and it's like, all right, we got to find ways to get AJ going. Like, it's neither. Like, no one really right now is feasting in this offense because the yardage has been so low. And that's just the frustrating part of it. So, I've talked of the problems to death, and I've explained that you have the personnel problems, that's just coaching and the offensive coordinator, the execution, which is by the players, the scheme is clearly offensive coordinator and the coach, so that's Patullo and Nick. I mean, I'm not sitting here going to say they need to fire Kevin Patullo. I mean, even if they fire him, it's not like they're going to rip the playbook up, completely install a new playbook, and then do something completely different that they've never done before all year. That's just not likely to happen in a regular season. My guess is Patullo will not be a play caller next year for this team, but we'll see what happens. But there are things they can do with the offense within the playbook that they have. I think they can spread the offense out more. We don't need to run condensed sense. We don't need to sit out in the standard 2x2 where you have like one half of the field doing something and the other half that's just kind of standing there. I think you can spread them out. 3x1 sets really worked for this team, especially against the Rams. I think that I think you can run a lot of empty sets. I think you need to play more 11 personnel instead of this 12-13 personnel. Lean into the best 11 players on your team. And that's what offensive philosophy really should start. When you think about building a scheme, you've got to look at the best 11 players of your team and build around them, right? You got to have plays every week where it's like, all right, how can we get Saquon Barkley going? How can we get A.J. Brown going? How can we get Devontae Smith going? How can we get Dallas Goedert going? And you got to have plays to handle every sort of defense, every sort of coverage, every sort of thing that you could see, right? How can we get AJ going against zone? Well, we have this concept that we ran a lot in 2022 and he kept getting open against zone. All right, we'll run this then this week. Or this concept here, this concept, and they don't do that. And it's frustrating because it's in the playbook, right? Like, it's not like the playbook every year has drastically changed where they ripped out the plays and started new. It's all been the basic offense that they've run since Nick has been here, right? Even if Nick himself is not calling plays anymore, he clearly still has influence. And they just have to work on their sequencing. You know, having concepts build off of each other. One thing I like to say about play calling is like storytelling, where every play should build off of one another. You know, a great example, and I love this two-play sequence by the Eagles a few years ago. They were playing Dallas, 2022, it's Christmas Eve. So this is an all-black game when they lost. But first two plays of the game, it's Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They run A.J. Brown on a slant. He catches it. I think it got a first down or close to it. Nice play there. He's going up against Trayvon Diggs. Second play, they move A.J. opposite side of the formation. They give a similar look. They basically just flip the formation. Trayvon Diggs is thinking he's about to jump this route, get a pick early, and end this game quickly for the Cowboys. Nope. They ran a sluggo, made Diggs think it was a slant, and then A.J. Brown goes down the field 50 yards and scores a huge doesn't score. He gets a huge play to set him up for a field goal on that drive, and you know, stuff like that. And that's just good play sequencing. That's what good offensive coordinators do. And they can make these changes week-to-week basis. They can have more plays that do feature 11 personnel. They can pivot away from the run a little less. I know that sounds scary, but I think they should do it because it just hasn't been highly effective. Because let's be honest, you didn't pay Saquon Barkley $20 million to run into the ass of Cam Jurgens over and over again. You didn't pay A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith all that money to run clear-out routes all game. You paid them to be elite and make big plays, and you've got to get them to be able to do so. So you cannot let defenses continually dictate a top 5 receiver and a top 20 receiver from being able to impose their will on you. Something's got to give there, and you got to figure out something. And I think that's where they need to get more clever. Things that they could dig into the playbook. There have been aspects of the playbook that I've liked. Again, they're good in the red zone, and they've been really creative in the red zone. I think opening drive scripts, for the most part, have been fine. It's just as the game goes on, Kevin Patullo doesn't know how to adjust. And I think that's the inexperience kicking in. So that's stuff that they have to continuously work. Now, somebody I think is going to become important to pay attention to is Parks Frazier, who's on this staff. I forget his specific role, but he's someone who does have, admittedly a small amount, but has offensive coordinator experience, has play calling experience. I wouldn't be shocked if he steps in I wouldn't be shocked if this doesn't improve over the next month, if he doesn't step in and start calling plays. So this has been Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed this style of video, just a different style where I can just rant and talk about things like this. I'm just as frustrated as you all with the offense. I'm going to the game tomorrow. I'm going to be there. I'm excited to see the Eagles, but I'm dreading what the offense is going to look like against that Denver defense. If the offense comes out and they look good, then all this is a moot point and we can move on with our lives and be happy. Anyway, this has been Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy today. Fly Eagles fly. See you around.